Let's go gambling! Aw, dang it. 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 Aw, dang it.
Alrighty, we should be live. Nathan Burnett, episode 65 with the Six Man. You were actually, last time you were on was actually for a milestone episode. You were on for the 50th episode. Now we're on 65. So,
That's a,
what's up, man?
it's really been 15. A lot has happened for you since then. I know you've had a lot, your graduation and,
Yes, sir.
you've hit so many milestones since then. And I just want to congratulate on you for that, because I know you've been grinding a lot over there, and I see the hard work, and I know it's paying off. So happy to be a part of it and to have been a part of it, and happy to be a part of it again.
Thanks, man, for sure. For anybody that hasn't met the Six Man before, again, he was on for episode 50, so go check that out. But he's a pretty chill dude. Talks a lot of Canadian basketball, which we'll get into here soon. I think we're going to touch on the Olympics, USA versus Canada, in a future episode, so stay tuned for that. But along with grinding and everything like that, you may notice that around me, my background is much more bare than it usually is. I kind of talked about this in sort of an announcement video, but a lot of people get the announcements about my channel on the podcast because that tends to be like the first 5-10 minutes of every podcast episode is like channel updates. But I'm actually moving apartments here soon. So the bad news is y'all are going to have to deal with this background for a little bit. But the good news is once y'all do deal with it and bear with me, you finally won't have to see my bed and my living quarters in the background of the podcast and face cam videos. It'll actually be I'll actually be moving into like a proper apartment that has 2 bedrooms, so I can do bedroom and then office recording area in the second one, versus right now where I live with 3 roommates and we have like 200 square foot each. So I can reach back and touch my bed from where I record. So that's always
Been
fun.
there.
Yeah.
Been there. Living here in Toronto, I know that Canadian housing prices are pretty high, and so is rent, and it's just
Yeah.
I can appreciate this struggle, but you know what, big changes are coming, and I'm happy. I'm excited.
I heard that like Toronto is the Canadian LA and Vancouver is the Canadian New York. Is that like accurate or no?
I would say if you're saying real estate wise, I would make that comparison. But if you're talking about like just kind of the vibe of the city and the fact that Toronto really doesn't sleep, like I know they refer to New York as the city that never sleeps. I happen to be wearing a New York City shirt right now, but I would say that that's pretty accurate if you're talking about it that way. But yeah.
So Toronto's got more of a New York City culture wise.
I would definitely say so, like definitely more so than Vancouver. I would definitely say that Toronto is the New York City of Canada for sure.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Me and my girlfriend, this was like a secret before, but now it's like kind of gotten out, so I don't really think that it matters that I say this publicly anymore. Because I mean, its secret's already kind of gotten out to like family and the people we were trying to keep it from. But me and my girlfriend may actually move countries in the near future, just because of like multiple things. Like me and my girlfriend do want to like live like a life together. I will say that, and so we've had multiple conversations about that, and one of them is like maternity leave and healthcare and stuff like that. So like not to get political, but we kind of want to leave for things like that. And so one of the things that we've looked at is Canada, and I really like more of an urban life. So especially with me having like a basketball channel, we're looking to maybe go not in Toronto, but like around Toronto. Because again, like with it being like New York City, it'd be way too expensive to live in Toronto, but to live like 20-30 minutes from Toronto, I think would be cool, especially because that's
And
kind of how my podcast started with San Antonio anyway. Like I didn't live in San Antonio, but obviously I said I lived in San Antonio for branding. but I actually lived like in New Braunfels, which is 20 minutes from San Antonio. So it'd kind of be like a similar thing where I'd be like, yeah, now the podcast is in Toronto, but it's like actually like 20 minutes from Toronto.
Yeah, well, I honestly started out pretty much the same way. I mean, I really loved the name the Six Man Podcast, and this is like, this goes like 3 4 years back to when I first started it. But I I grew up in a town that had I found a way to say where I was from, like within the name or pay homage to that, there was no
Mm-hmm.
real way to do that. So I just wanted to pick something that was identifiable to pretty much anyone in any other country. Now I did choose the six, which is a little bit of a niche thing and hasn't aged well considering the whole Drake stuff. But yeah, I as of right now, I live about 20 minutes out of the city. It takes me about an hour to commute in, but that's the way I prefer it. I like things to be a bit quieter at night, and then if I want to go do something fun with friends or my girlfriend, like there's definitely that. It's got
Mm-hmm.
the variability there, and yeah, I actually I didn't know that you didn't start out in San Antonio, so yeah,
Yeah,
we're a lot more similar than I realized. There are a lot more parallels to these podcasts than I thought.
yeah, and I, of course, like again for like branding, I always just said I'm from San Antonio. But again, like that's not really like a secret because like if you go back to like the first kind of podcast episodes, I said like, oh, I live outside San Antonio. But of course, I'm like the Spurs are my team, and again, I live 20 minutes from San Antonio. My parents are from San Antonio, so and New Braunfels, many people didn't know where that city was. So I always just said like, oh, I'm from San Antonio because like it's one of those things where um like if you take the UK for instance, it's like, well, if you say like you're from London, everybody knows where London's at. Many people may not know the cities around it. So it's a similar thing.
Yeah.
It's like you just pick the most well-known city that's closest to it. But now I actually do live in San Antonio and all that. And then I did a similar thing when the podcast like first started. So I went to college in Houston for 1 year. So I moved from San Antonio to Houston, and then this started as like a duo podcast with my buddy that I met there, who was a Houston Rockets fan. And so it's
Oh, yeah.
kind of we started the podcast going into it, sort of having a Shannon Sharp, Skip Bayless like relationship. Like that was the goal, is like Spurs fan, Rockets fan podcast together. But
Yeah.
so we called it Plus 71 because it was the 210 area code and then the 281 area code for Houston. And it's sort of like with me moving from San Antonio to Houston, plus 71. But was really bad for search engine optimization and everything else because you have to go through,
Yeah.
like on the phone, especially with mobile, you have to go through like 3 different keyboards to hit the plus sign. So whenever it moved to like just me, because my buddy had like some personal issues where like he couldn't pursue the podcast anymore, and still in contact with him, so he might actually come back as like a special guest.
Yeah,
It was just
I'm in a
rebranded.
similar situation as well with my co-host. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, but it's been quite a while since I have uploaded the two of us, and
Hmm.
there's been a bit of a transition period, and I've honestly like been struggling to find a sense of identity outside of that. Like, it's pretty tough to just bounce ideas like off yourself now.
Yeah.
If I had a little bit of a bigger audience, it would be easier just to engage with them live. But yeah,
Hmm.
it's been a battle, and like that's good that you guys are still in contact because
Yeah.
my co-host and I, will always be best friends, and it's nothing but love and positivity from here. Like
Hmm.
he's on to bigger and better things, like something that is better for him, and I'm proud of him for doing that. And I'd hope for your co-host's sake that he's doing the same.
Hmm. Yeah. It's good that like you bring up like solo episodes are definitely harder to do. That's why I try and get like a guest almost every single episode because again, like
Yeah.
you need somebody to bounce ideas off of. There I have been getting better at like solo episodes, which is good because I'll write all my thoughts out like going into the episode, and then I'll just kind of like read them out like in like a radio voice and just kind of do the solo episode
Yeah.
that way. So
It
definitely getting
definitely
better
gets
at it.
easier.
Yeah, but you definitely need like, and I say I like I'm saying you, but I don't mean you. I mean like whoever does podcasting. You
Yeah.
definitely need like more like practice doing solo because it's definitely a lot more difficult. So I definitely try and like have like a guest every time because it definitely is like easier to bounce ideas off of somebody, obviously, and then you get like the chemistry in the episode, and then it's
Yeah.
easier to make clips out of as well. Like it's funny, like you know, like that meme where it's like you have no idea how good Tim Duncan was. It's like
Yeah.
whenever you have like somebody, whenever you have people having like a big debate, it's always like more entertaining than just like a
Yeah.
guy talking to himself or whatever. Um,
Believe me, like between the Raptors and Spurs, we got a lot of ammo in the chamber, so there's a lot of potential for that here. Don't you worry.
yeah.
But yeah.
Going into that, is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we dive into the actual basketball stuff, or no?
No, like I mean, we should probably acknowledge that the Celtics have ripped the heart out of most NBA fans. I know a lot of people did not want to see that happen other than Celtics fans.
Mm-hmm.
I tried my best not to be the biggest hater, but I've got some people in my life who are very strong Celtics fans, and it's a tough time.
Mm-hmm.
Tough time seeing them up right now. But I know there are a lot of players on that team who like it's their dream just came true last night, and I can't possibly hate on that. I want to be as positive as I can, and like as a fan and lover of basketball, as corny as all the Jason Tatum quotes are, I still want to find it in my heart to be happy for the guy. I mean, I love Jalen Brown. I've always said that I like him better than Tatum. That's not a knock on Tatum, but Drew Holiday, one of my favorite players from the Bucks championship run. If you know anything about his story, like there's no one who deserves it more than him. He's one of the hardest working players in the league, and he year in year out seems to be underrated, and his defense, while still being praised, seems to go unappreciated. So there's a lot of guys on that team, like even Derek White, who came from San Antonio. I'm sure you can find it in your heart to be happy about that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Like, I saw somebody made a map, and whether it was a meme or like the actual thing, I don't know, because
I think I
sometimes,
saw that too.
yeah, where it was like what every state is cheering for in the finals, and the entire map was blue except for Massachusetts.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think that it was just part of Massachusetts. I don't even think it was all of it. I
yeah,
just think it was like close to Boston, which was the funny part.
they need to make like California though, like an extra shade of blue, like for the Lakers.
Yeah, like darker. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
because they're extra salty now. I mean, it's 18-17, but
yeah, exactly.
I stand by the fact that the Minneapolis Lakers have 6 and the Los Angeles Lakers have 11.
Mm-hmm.
Just want to leave that there.
Yeah, and I talked about that in my most recent video too. Like I mentioned, like, Red Arbach. He literally like he's the only coach in the NBA's top 15 coaches to be outside of the 90s, 2000s, or 2010s. Because he won 9 out of the 18 Celtics championships, almost like all back to back.
Yeah.
So it was like anytime you bring up like the amount of championships, people are always gonna have asterisks next to it. Because I mean, you
8
can
in a
say the
row.
same thing about the Warriors. They have Philadelphia Warriors ones. So
Okay.
the Spurs are the only ones I know that like they have more than one of the only ones that have more than 3 as like the same franchise, and then the Bulls obviously have 6, and then the Warriors are in third place behind the Lakers with 7, but they had the Philadelphia Warriors. So the Bulls and the Spurs are the top 2 that have them as continuous franchises, and then everybody else has 3 as the Pistons, the 76ers, and the Heat, and then everybody else has 1. So
Yeah, you don't really hear anyone saying that the Warriors have 7 championships.
mm-hmm.
That's never really mentioned, but yeah. We can get into the draft stuff if you want. I know it's kind of an underwhelming draft, but I feel like it needs to be talked about. And honestly, I'm of the belief that these are the kinds of drafts that really do build franchises, because the pick 10 through 25 are so close in margin
Mm-hmm.
that who knows who you could be selecting with the 20th pick. Who
Mm-hmm.
knows what like a Dalton Connect can turn into if he goes at like 6 or 7. there's a lot of what ifs with this draft, and that's kind of why it's kind of underwhelming. But
Mm-hmm.
I know San Antonio Spurs fans are happy because
Yeah.
Toronto tanked and made the pick for you guys better.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly, I'm happy that that happened because it was disgusting watching the Toronto Raptors throw game after game after game. I mean, it was such a joke that Jonte Porter decided to bet on his under, like
Mm-hmm.
throwing in them losing because he knew the idea was to tank. And in the end, they didn't get the pick back, which the basketball gods were doing the right thing because they absolutely did not deserve that pick. I
Mm-hmm.
know Toronto did have a lot of turmoil. I know RJ had some personal stuff happen, and I know Quickly was away from the team for a while as well. But I just, there's nothing that hurts me more than a team not trying to succeed.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Like as a
I was gonna go to more games, but I gave up on them. I'll go next season, but
mm-hmm.
yeah, it was pretty heartbreaking.
Yeah, and like again, the Spurs and the Spurs and Toronto are definitely like more intertwined now. So like the Spurs had a similar thing going on for a while, um, and even this season, of course, people are saying like, we're tanking and doing all this stuff. Um, and I talked about that in my. I made a video recently about the Raptors, and I talked about how they really could have been contenders for like the next 3 years after their championship, but they just like kept like either stuff kept happening to them or they kept making bad decisions. And one of the things was when they got Kawhi in the first place, they traded away picks, and then when they got Podol back, they traded picks. So it was
Yeah,
like the thing that could save them the most right now is picks, but it's like, well, you already gave all
they
those
keep
up.
losing them. Yeah.
So,
And that's
um,
the interesting thing where you get into like you were talking about the timeline of San Antonio and how like they've now got what is the seventh pick
I think it's the
and what's their
is it the I thought it was the fourth and the eighth, but let me double check.
something like that. I think I have it here. So Hawks are one, Wizards two, Rockets three, Spurs four, Pistons five, Hornets six, Blazers seven, Spurs eight.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
eighth was
So
y'all's that we got.
I honestly think that the window is now. I don't know how long Popovich is going to coach.
Mm-hmm.
You guys go all in this summer.
Mm-hmm.
Who I'd like seeing the timeline of these other 7 footers, and I would love to see Wemby play 15, 20 years. But him being at this level, like potential best player in the NBA, like his second or third season type dominance,
Mm-hmm.
the time is now. I
Exactly.
and I don't see any reason why you draft these like what if young players
Mm-hmm.
when although you would extend the timeline in which you can be successful, it's just not worth risking not having Pop there to guide them and not having Wemby there due to, who knows what could happen between now and then.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you got a player like that, you go all in. I don't think the Spurs will should ever aspire to go anywhere near missing the playoffs for the next 15 years.
100%. And like I saw people like saying weird stuff like that, where it was like they said, "Oh, we should package the fourth and the eighth pick to move up to the first," and I was like, "Why?" I was like,
Oh,
"This is one of the most like ESPN even said this is one of the worst draft picks like in recent history. Besides, I think it was 2013 with Giannis was like one of
yeah.
the other worst ones. Obviously, we
And then
still got
again,
Giannis
like
out of it, but
they could just trade down to like 15 and still take an effective player
yeah.
and get someone else back in that trade. Like I don't know what pick Atlanta has. There was the
Mm-hmm.
talk of Trey Young. I do like the idea of getting another ball handler in there. So like maybe a guy like Brandon Ingram or Paul George, like those
Mm-hmm.
types of guys, I think would be a really good addition.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want a winner and you want someone who's gonna play the right way.
Yeah. The only argument that I've seen for trading up to number one, and it still isn't even that good of an argument, but at least it's a
The French connection, I would say
um
maybe.
well, that, and also the fact that like people are saying, well, Sar is somebody else that's closer to Wemby's height. So they were saying like, oh well, Sar is one of the only people that can actually like maybe guard Wemby at that height. So you
To
take
draft that
away
guy.
you take away a team's ability, like you take away the team's ability to make Wemby's kryptonite. Like
Yeah.
just give us them both, so like we have the weapon and the weapons counter on the same
Yeah.
team, so
But
that you can't use
it's
it
gonna
against us.
it's gonna get to the point where teams are gonna have to start looking for Wemby stoppers. Like teams
Yeah.
had to look for KD stoppers and LeBron stoppers, which like they don't even stop them; they just slow them down a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I talked
And
a lot about like the LeBron wall that the Suns did, during 2021. I think it was. I think it was the year that they went to finals.
yeah,
Yeah. Um.
because they were a first round exit after their chip.
Yeah.
I remember that. That was rough.
Yeah. But they basically just had four people. They basically just had four people on LeBron at once whenever he went into the paint, and then they tried the same thing against Giannis to see if it would work, and then Giannis is just Giannis. So.
But that was Giannis like exploding. Like we've all seen the meme with Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday laughing while they're down 2-0
Mm-hmm.
because Dario Saric is out for the series. They knew it was over.
Mm-hmm. One of
And
my very first, like, I don't know if you want to call it one of my very first videos, but definitely one of my very first videos that I did like a lot of editing on was and I'm gonna try and remake like one of them this year because I think it would be a good trend, but I don't think I did it for last year or the year before. But I did the 2021 postseason explained with memes. And
oh,
then part of
I
it,
think I remember that video. I
yeah,
yeah,
before like I did one where I put
definitely
Chris
had fish
Middleton
Middleton.
before Giannis's injury, and he's a
Yeah,
raccoon in a trash can, and then after Giannis's injury, he just goes Super Saiyan Ultra Instinct. It's like, and that's always the meme with Chris Middleton.
it's
Like
the
he,
cycle of Chris Middleton
yeah,
being underrated.
yeah, I've shown it on camera, like I've shown it like in editing so many times, like the Chris Middleton thing, and I think the same problem is happening with Paul George right now, just because many people have made like the take, and I'm not the first person to make this take, that Paul George is getting to that age where he just wants to get paid. He doesn't even care about winning anymore. He's just like, yeah, sign me for
Yeah,
a mil and I'll play. And then when they lose, he's just like, yeah.
I
And
mean
then
he cares
everybody,
about winning, but not to the point where he's willing to mortgage his future,
yeah,
like other players.
yeah. Like
He'll
everybody
take the
clowned him.
safer, tender place to go,
Mhm.
but he won't make that extra risk for like the team that might be over the
Mhm.
top.
Everybody clowned him because he lost the first round, and then I don't remember like
And I know
exactly what
he
he
was right.
said. I don't know exactly what he said, but he basically said some form of like it is what it is. And then he went on his
Yeah,
podcast later and wore like a Kobe shirt. And everybody's like, how do you have the audacity to wear like a Mamba mentality shirt
he'd be
and
so
then you say
disappointed.
it is what it is after
Yeah,
losing? So, yeah.
because I know Kobe won't take that one on the chin.
Mhm.
Kobe is not taking no, off the side of the backboard shot on the chin.
Mhm. And people did the
Because
same
like,
thing with Jason Tatum. Like Jason Tatum said, "Oh, we lost game 4, but it's," or he said, somebody asked him, "If you lose game 5, what are you going to do?" And he said, "If we lose game 5, it isn't the end of the world." And everybody was like, "Bro, how are you going to be texting Kobe and recreating Kobe pictures and you're saying if we lose in the
that's not the
finals,
end of the
it's
world.
all right?"
Nah, if I'm about to lose, like potentially blow a 3-0 lead, I'd be foaming out the mouth.
Mhm.
I
Exactly.
like I'd be beside myself.
Mhm.
Now I know that's unhealthy, but like you're a pro athlete, you're supposed to care. Don't act like you don't.
Mhm.
That's because I can't stand when athletes are nonchalant. Like there's a level of stoicism I think that is necessary to be a competitor and to be that like that dog in a room full of like you know I- I'd say non dogs, but Um, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I'll use the Jason Tatum talk to kind of bring it back to the Celtics because I did want to touch more about that, and then we can lead it back into the
So did
draft
I.
stuff here later. But yeah, let's talk about the Celtics final run. I had like a poll. I had a poll on my Instagram asking, do you think this is one of the easiest final runs of recent history, like 2019 to now, or what do you think is?
I think it is one of the easiest ones, but I also think they made it look easy a little bit. Like they made the finals look so easy because of how they manhandled Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
And to Indiana's credit, that was about the closest 4-game series I think I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how they blew that first game, but they should have won that. And once Boston found a way to win that game, I think they knew in their head that they were sweeping them and that they were going to take that week of rest and that they were going to absolutely blitz whoever they played in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think they knew that they were going to kind of have their biggest matchup in the finals. Like, well, I'd
Mm-hmm.
hope so. They didn't really have much challenge before that, but I do think it was a product of like their guard defenders are absolutely insane, and in today's NBA, like that's one of the most valuable pieces you can have on a team is a guy that's not going to take a bunch of bad shots, but will play like relentless defense,
Mm-hmm. And
especially on the other team's guards. Like,
mm-hmm. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry. I like saw
oh,
you
all
like
good.
take. I saw you like take a breath, and I thought you were done. I didn't know you were taking a breath. Um, but I agree 100% because I had said I had talked. I've talked a lot about the Drew Holiday trade, and I every time it's like Drew Holiday's brought up, I say it every single time. I was like the Bucks should have never gotten rid of him. And
I said it when they traded him. Like,
yeah,
I
exactly.
just knew it in my heart that the Bucks were done.
Mm-hmm.
That was a horrible trade.
Mm-hmm.
They, and I think ultimately, and I'll just put this on the record right now, that will be the reason Giannis leaves. That
Mm-hmm.
trade. It may not be said out loud right away, but when it's all said and done, it's just the changing of their defensive identity. He was just like he was the Bucks' defensive culture,
Mm-hmm.
and they just gave it up for Damian Lillard, who, by the way, I found out because he knew he was going to get traded, was extra cautious and didn't really work out in the offseason and admittedly came into the season in the worst shape of his career.
Mm-hmm.
So, like many of the Shaq years in LA, he spent the first couple months playing himself into shape, which for Dame Lillard, like everyone knows how hard he works, like his mentality, like that was really upsetting to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I hope it didn't rub Giannis the wrong way. I hope they can come back next season and be dominant because I love watching that team succeed. I'm a big fan of Giannis, but it's just like
Mm-hmm.
as a realist, like I don't know what they're gonna do to fix that hole because yeah, they've created a little bit more offense, but the gap between Damian Lillard's offense and Drew Holiday's defense is like it's not worth it. It's
Yeah.
not worth the picks they gave up. Like Boston made 2 trades this summer where I think they might have been the ones getting the better player and
Mm-hmm.
they seemed to retain picks. If anything, I think this championship is a product of like Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens being generational general managers. I there were all the jokes about how when Danny Ainge would call like hang up the phone because he was there to rob you. Like look what he did to the Nets. Look what he's done in Utah. I mean, he got what 6 first round picks for Rudy Gobert, and yes, that this season did age a bit better, but at the time, I couldn't believe like 6 first round picks for Rudy Gobert,
Mm-hmm.
and that's Danny Ainge. That's what he does. I don't know what he was saying on the phone to make. Like, there's no way Minnesota should have done that for that many picks. I feel like they could have got him for
Mm-hmm.
less,
And
but I'm not going to fault them for that trade.
I have a video coming out here soon that looks back at the Rudy Gobert trade and kind of says like, was it worth it or was it not? Um, but yeah, like I always talk about Drew Holiday and how he's amazing on defense, And like I really think people take that for granted a lot. And I had made the joke in like the basketball group chat. I said, "Well, this can go one of two ways." I said either Dallas wins and Luka finally gets a ring, and then Kyrie finally gets to flip off the Celtics and all that. And I said, or the Celtics win and I still get a positive out of it because Derek White gets a ring, and I get to talk about how good he is as a player and how he played on the Spurs. And people are finally showcased Drew Holiday's defense. And yeah, and people were saying that like the first 2 or 3 games that like he could be up there for Finals MVP, and I was really thinking that as well. Like I really thought like Drew Holiday could have been up there for Finals MVP, and I just love his defense. And now the Bucks don't have that, obviously, so it's definitely gonna be harder, especially because he went to one of their main competitors as well. Like it's always it had
That's
always
what I
been
heard
Bucks
too.
versus
Like,
Celtics like for a while, and the Bucks were trying to get something to beat the Celtics, and then they gave them like one of their big three.
yeah,
Like
they're like, oh, let's trade the guy that can clamp up the guy we just got to one of the best teams in the NBA.
yeah, like it made no sense.
The
But
Porzingis trade also made no sense though. That
mm,
was they got picks back, and they still had their identity because Derek White was this untapped resource in San Antonio, it turns out. So they bring him in, and all of a sudden he's this star role player. So they had like 5 guys that on any given night could give you like 6 3-pointers, like 8 rebounds, and 3 steals. Like that type of defense that turns into offense is very valuable, and it's it's a testament to the continuous roster improvements of the Celtics, because like you can say that every year for the last 6 or 7 years they have improved in some way, and it would be pretty scary to think that they might improve again next year, because as a
yeah.
Knicks fan, I'm trying to see them come out of the East.
Have you
But
so what do you think, is there any team that you think could have done anything differently, like besides injuries, that could have beaten the Celtics, whether it be the actual Mavs or anybody in the East,
this
whether it be the
this is not
Timberwolves if they had
this is
won?
not bias. This is not bias. There are 2 teams that I think, had they met, would have beat the Celtics. And the first one, you'll probably clown me. Feel free. I do think the Knicks, with a healthy OG, would have took Boston to 6 or 7 games, if not won the series. But
I had that
you know what?
prediction as well before the Pacers won. I said
Yeah,
the Celtics would beat the Knicks in 6. So,
yeah. I mean, that would have been a much more competitive Eastern Conference final than what we got. But I do think the team that would have beat Boston is the Nuggets, and I do think, had the Nuggets got there, the idea of this team going to the finals back to back when a team hasn't done it since LeBron, and just I believe in the Celtics, but there's a part of them that's missing. Like, they're a great team. They remind me, it's like almost like college ball. Like, there's no one guy that you can attack, and it's like 5 amazing players that, on half the teams in the NBA, they'd be one of the best, if not the second best player on that team.
yeah,
So
like the Timberwolves, it took them having both Cat and Gobert to stop Jokic.
yeah,
So, I definitely want to see the Timberwolves back because they were my pick to win it all. I had said whoever wins the
they went far, man. Like, that
yeah
was a good pick. I remember seeing that, like, the Timberwolves, like,
yeah
because
everybody doubted
there were so many
me.
teams I was saying. I mean, I had the Mavs winning the title this year. I as much as I wanted my Knicks to win every year, I say that's what I want, but I know in my heart that that's probably not what's going to happen. Although we're winning it next year, mark my words. Although I'm pretty scared of the Spurs next year too.
Don't
I
don't
just
don't turn into a Stephen A. Smith meme where it's like
Develop.
it's Knicks, it's our year.
Hey, it can't get much worse than like the Porzingis years, honestly.
Hmm.
That's why I just knowing the identity of the team, the way they compete, they'll be a playoff contender as long as Jalen Brunson is there.
Hmm.
But back into the draft, or I did have one more thing I wanted to say about the finals though, and that has to do with the finals MVP. You know, we talked about the LeBron stoppers of the world, and you know,
Hmm.
one of the most notorious finals MVPs is Andre Iguodala winning in 2015. But I do think over time the Jalen Brown pick, not that it was the wrong pick, I certainly think it was the right pick, but it might I definitely think it's going to age, especially if Tatum continues to ascend and like wins another title and maybe
Hmm.
gets a Finals MVP. There may be the argument that like he may have been robbed for that. Because as good as Jalen Brown was, like Tatum was also amazing. He didn't shoot that well, but aside from that, everything else was there. The defense, like all of that. I know Jalen Brown's defense was insane. There was that game with 3 steals, 3 blocks, but interestingly enough, Jalen Brown's Finals MVP, he has the lowest PER of any Finals MVP since like 1980 something. I maybe even as long as the award's been around, including Andre Iguodala by quite a bit.
Hmm.
So like player efficiency rating, which if I don't know how much of a stat buff you and your audience are, but
Hmm.
it's a pretty good measurable statistic as to a player's effectiveness. For reference, Giannis has the highest PER in NBA Finals history, and I believe Shaq in 2000 is second. It's
Hmm.
like 36, and then this year I think Jalen Brown was like 16.
Hmm.
So a very weak Finals MVP. Like I saw articles talking about how the Finals MVP is pointless. Well, this year it did feel kind of pointless because it didn't do what we as an NBA audience wanted it to do. We want to see one guy, one Michael Jordan, put the team on his back and do something we've never seen. Like, even though we know as NBA fans, you can't do it single handedly.
Hmm.
So I don't know what our expectations are, but I'm just like I said, trying to do my best to be happy for the
Yeah.
Celtics, be happy for Jalen Brown and like all the guys, because like I said, there are a lot of people whose dream came true.
Hmm.
So
And
trying
you
to look at it that way.
and you could argue like that's one major reason for their success as well, that it's like not one team. Because again, like as a Spurs fan, that's one huge thing that contributed to our successes. We really tried to play the 1 through 5 basketball, and we still do now with Pop, and
Yep.
people clown us for it, saying like, "Well, the game's changed. You can't keep playing it that way." But when you go back to, I mean, not to, no pun intended with Tim Duncan's nickname, but when you go back to the fundamentals of basketball, sometimes like that's what makes you win. And I'm not just talking about
Yep.
Tim Duncan. I'm talking about as the team. We played the 1 through the 5. We spaced the 4. Everybody had a role. So with it not being necessarily one person on the Celtics, you could argue that that led into it as well, because you had Al Horford and Porzingis basically doing the same exact things together on and off the bench. You had Derek White as another 3-point shooter, which again, like I loved. You had Drew Holiday playing defense. You had Jalen Brown for the clutch, and then you had Tatum just being another role player in Tatum. So.
Yeah, like they didn't really have a closer. They just kind of balled out,
Mhm.
and they found ways to win
Mhm.
as a team.
Yeah.
As someone who's admittedly been watching a lot more college basketball the last couple of years, like I think that's the way basketball's supposed to be played. And although I can't stand the things that come out of the mouth of the players that are on that team because it's so damn corny,
Yeah.
the basketball itself is poetry at times.
Yeah.
And
Everybody's.
it sucks that less less people are giving Joe Mazzulla his flowers when it comes to like there were a lot of really soft players on this
Mm,
team, and he managed to galvanize this group and make them believe that they were championship level.
mhm.
So fault him for being corny, for saying everyone's the villain in someone else's eyes. Like this team is the corniest in NBA
Yeah.
history.
Like
That
Tatum said the
goes
freaking
without saying.
Kawhi, or Tatum said the freaking Kanye quote. I don't know if you saw
I was
that.
gonna talk about that because he's like, everyone wants to know what we would have done if we didn't win. I guess we'll never know,
And
but
then
we do know.
all the comments were like, "Bro,
We
you've lost the
know.
last 5 years. What do you mean?"
You've literally gone to the finals and didn't win.
Yeah.
Like, because the way Kanye was saying that is like, look, they're like, who's this guy? What happens if he doesn't win? He won. It was his first album.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
not a like. I felt like that one he was trying to piss people off.
Yeah.
Specifically that
And
that one.
and I'm glad you mentioned the coach of the Celtics, because there are so many instances where, like, even this year with the Suns, you can get a bunch of like these superstar players, but even if you have a bunch of puzzle pieces, you have to put the puzzle together. Again, you can say that with the Spurs, or like one of the people that I commended on it was Mike Brown, because he was one of the people that got all these new people to Sacramento and took the Kings to the playoffs for the first time in forever. So it does take a good coach to get all these puzzle pieces and be able to really make it fit and make it work. So yeah, he definitely deserves some, if not a lot, of that credit as a coach to be able to pull that off and not just have a disaster like the Suns happen, where it's like, yeah, we got Porzingis, Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown, but we're a second round exit because none of them can actually work on the floor together. Or they're like the Lakers with Russell Westbrook, AD, and LeBron. It's like, well, you have three people that all play in the paint. Like, what did you expect to happen? Now the key is just filled up.
Yeah. I like the Derek White story where he talks about how he congratulated Joe for winning Coach of the Month, and he just turned to him and went, "No one cares," which
I
is
didn't
true.
even
I
hear
didn't
about
even know
that, to be honest.
I didn't know he won Coach of the Month. So like he was right. No one cares. Like, and he had his sights set on one thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it just the whole year he's been doing some generational crazy coaching shit, which, 5-10 years down the line, if they have a couple more, they might be talking about him very differently, because I don't know if you're aware of how Popovich was first perceived when he went to San Antonio.
Because he was an executive and like hired himself.
He was hated.
Yeah.
He was hated. And it was like, even his first title, they didn't even really give him any credit.
Mm-hmm.
It took like years for them to realize that Popovich was actually the visionary of that team.
Mm-hmm.
And then now it's like, you think Spurs, you think Popovich, like you think Duncan, and just those two are synonymous.
Mm-hmm.
Like Duncan would not have been Duncan without Pop, and vice versa. Like that was a match made in heaven, and there's a reason Wemby was so damn excited when he went to San Antonio and not Charlotte.
Mm-hmm. And people talk about that as well, where they said Scoot wanted to be the number one pick, but Wemby wanted to go to the Spurs. There's a big difference, and
Scoot wants. I don't know if Scoot necessarily wants to be the best basketball player he can be, but it's pretty clear that that's what Wemby wants. Mm-hmm. That's ultimately why Wemby went one. Why it wasn't even, as much as people tried to make it a discussion, it wasn't. I bet the Spurs didn't even consider it.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I mean, as an NBA team, you have to show respect to a player, but beyond that, like, I don't know what was happening behind closed doors, but the idea of passing on Wemby.
Yeah. Well, speaking of draft picks, we'll finally lead that back into draft stuff. Again,
French draft.
Yeah, we had said already, or we've actually mentioned it a couple of times now, that this is one of the weaker draft classes, and a side effect of that is that a lot of these picks can be changed around and interswapped. So my order may be different than the six man's order, and both of our orders may be different from another mock draft or your order or whatever it may be. So we'll just kind of go back and forth with whatever order we have. I don't even think my list is in order to begin with. I think I just started writing down random names, to be honest. But again, it doesn't even matter because of how interchangeable these names are. But the consensus is that the number one pick will be Mr. Alex himself, Alexander Sarr. And again, with this being such a underwhelming draft, everybody, I saw a lot of people saying he's only the number one pick because of this draft. And had he been in another draft, he would have been like in the 20s. So,
But that's like saying this NBA team would have beaten this NBA team this year. Like
mm-hmm.
he's the number one pick or the projected number one pick this year. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Let
But
me let me see what notes
do
I
you
got.
have any issues with him going at one, or is there anyone else that you think might potentially swap, or do you think the Hawks are going to trade the pick?
I don't think they're gonna trade it because the Dejounte um trade isn't gonna work out, which again, like I called. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't have a problem with him going number one. I just wanted to comment on the fact that like had he been in like say like last year's draft, people would have like obviously compared him to Wemby a lot like they are now, and he definitely would have been like low teens at the earliest, I think. So
Yeah, you
if
think that
that,
low?
so yeah, because there's
Yeah,
so
it,
many
it
good
depends. Like,
players.
I think there's some players that are being hurt by the narrative surrounding this draft.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, anytime there's a draft that's being like labeled as just a bunch of crap, there
Mm-hmm.
are some diamonds in the rough. Like there's going to be that, that all-star
Mm-hmm.
somewhat later in the draft that someone can steal. And like I don't know, I always like to say like you should watch what the Nuggets are doing, you should watch what the Spurs are doing, and there's a couple other teams you can never be too careful with. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
The Raptors love to say that they tried to trade up for Giannis, but I don't really view them as that big of a threat. They haven't been that aggressive as of late. But look at the teams with lots of picks at the earlier point in the draft because, like I said, I think most of the value in this draft is those role players, those guys that are, you're going to be able to draft and mold into what your team needs rather than like take the best available player with the highest ceiling,
Mm-hmm.
but he has the most development. So
Yeah. And I definitely like um how do I phrase this? I just completely forgot what I was gonna say. Sorry. But
all good, buddy.
yeah, like I definitely think that I don't even remember. Sorry. I'll just go into what the other thing I was gonna say, which is
All good.
a lot of people kind of compare Sar to KD, and he kind of reminds me of KD as well. And the reason I wrote that down is because, I just remembered what I was gonna say. You were talking about diamonds in the rough. Like again, we talked about Giannis earlier. Like Giannis came from the 2013 draft, which was considered like one of the worst drafts. So I mean, there's
Yeah.
definitely still good players to come out of it. But yeah. But
And I
let's.
definitely think SAR's ceiling is higher than we think.
Mhm.
I don't think like sorry for mentioning that right after Giannis, but I don't
Mhm.
necessarily think his ceiling is Giannis, but I do think he can be like Evan Mobley,
Yeah, that's what I
with
have written down.
like like offensive touch, like ideally a better and more comfortable shooter, or
Mhm.
would develop into that. Now I know Mobley can be more of a four at times, but
Mhm.
I think the value there is the length and the height, the
Yeah.
shot blocking, and more importantly, like just deterring like other players from coming into the paint. And the other thing being like, how many Wemby stoppers are there going to be in the NBA when he is a total problem in
Yeah.
1, 2 years?
Even in his first couple months, he was trying to develop Kareem Skyhook, and everybody was saying like, if he gets that, it's over. So, but
Yeah, it's just developing the feel like when to do that. Like,
mhm.
because I guarantee it that like the way he works, his skyhook's probably automatic at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's at, an empty gym or like, a trainer playing defense on you, very different than in a game. But
Yeah.
it's the ceiling for Wemby is I can't even begin to imagine what I'm gonna witness these next few years.
Yeah. And we're also like we're in a weird period where we're sort of comparing players to comparing players to comparing players. Like I
Yeah,
said that Giannis, and Giannis has. People are gonna argue with me about this because it's definitely changed as the years went on. But definitely back in 2021, I said that like Giannis could have a similar play style to Tim Duncan. Obviously, he's way more like in the paint than Tim Duncan was. Tim Duncan's more mid range. Um, but I compared Giannis to Tim Duncan, and then I compared Evan Mobley to Tim Duncan, and then now we're comparing Sar to Mobley. So it's like we're comparing Sar to Mobley, and then Mobley to Tim Duncan, and then compare Tim Duncan to whoever. It's like we're
yeah.
linking multiple chains here.
At what
So
point have we watered down our Tim Duncan into a not, you know?
yeah,
At what point does he have any identity of Tim Duncan? But yeah, you
yeah,
go down that tree, it's like, because who is Tim Duncan's comparison?
yeah.
We
It's
could go
this.
we could go even deeper.
I'm sure Tim Duncan got compared to his teammate David Robinson, but it's like
I'll try and
it's
find it right now.
it's the same as like you don't look the same as your great grandfather, I assume. So, it's just
Yeah.
like after so many years and like differentiations and like making a copy of a copy of a copy, it just like fades after a while. But I did put that like he reminds me of KD, and I did want to like talk about that because I feel like people are gonna misinterpret that because we say so often, especially with these larger players like Porzingis and Wemby and Holmgren, like more recently, like we always say like, oh, he's the next KD. I'm not saying he's the next KD. I'm saying he reminds me of KD. Because again, like with Holmgren, especially like people were comparing him to KD, and it's like, well, I don't think Holmgren's gonna be the next KD, but I'll put these in editing. I did save two clips, one of Sar's shooting form and one of KD's shooting form, and you can overlay them like on top of each other, and Sar shoots almost the exact same way that KD does.
Interesting.
But I did notice like, and I'm gonna have to get up to show this, so I'm gonna have to take my headphones off so I won't hear you. But I'm gonna have to do a live demonstration for this. It's kind of weird.
Let's see it.
I noticed that he does this weird thing when he shoots threes. He does kind of this like jumping jack three. I don't know if you've noticed it before, but he kind of does this when he shoots his three. He just kind of like I don't know if you've seen that. Like when
Yeah,
he
like this
shoots
stance
his
goes.
three, he like spreads his legs open, which I was watching footage of, and I was like, I don't think I've seen very many players that do that.
That's his green light animation. Like that's what he does.
Yeah.
When he leans a bit forward and goes into the it's going in.
Yeah. I was like, it works, but like to me, I was like, something's, I don't know. It was just
We all,
interesting.
we all have our own green light animation where we're like, all right, there's a little bit of a hitch to it, but it goes in, so it's fine.
Yeah. And I did notice that like, and this is another reason that I said like, I don't think he would be a number one pick in another draft. He's a very energetic player, but I did notice that when he does start to get like multiple defenders or a lot of coverage or like really contested shots, he does seem a bit like anxious or hesitant at times. And so definitely like going into the NBA, or even a step beyond, obviously the playoffs, like that's definitely going to be an issue. Um, it was an issue for Jarrett Allen for the Cavs, which is why everybody clowns him with the Cavs. People are saying that Holmgren with the OKC was saying like, oh, the lights are too bright in the playoffs, So that's definitely something that he'd have to work on as well. Cause like,
Yeah.
say you're doing a fast break with him, and then he looks behind and like he looks back and he sees three defenders like sprinting at him. Like I could definitely see him like getting nervous somewhat somehow, and even though he has like a wide open run to the rim, he sees these people running at him and he like misses it somehow.
Yeah, I do think like a lot of his raw athletic ability is going to get him by, and that's why he'll have a place in the NBA, like being 7'1", being like
Mm-hmm.
pretty mobile. Like he's somewhat quick for that height, so he'll definitely have a place there. But it's like, you know, like any other player needs to find their role where they can be successful and contribute to winning. And ultimately, all the potential is there. Like, you know, the he could build an
Mm-hmm.
offensive game. Like, you know, look at what certain bigs are doing, like Şengün, Jackson. Like those guys were given a lot more of the keys to the offense, and they were scoring more. Now, I have my own issues with guys like Jaren Jackson, and I do think that is a somewhat good comp for Alex Sarr. Jaren Jackson this year made a conscious effort to increase his scoring while subconsciously forgetting to do everything that makes him good at basketball.
Mm-hmm.
He is a defensive juggernaut who this year decided to play like a less efficient Kevin Durant. And
Mm-hmm.
it was hard to watch. And I'm like, one of my big videos that I've been making is it's going to be talking about that because of how just frustrating it is to watch a great player play basketball the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope wherever he goes, he's taught to play basketball the right way so that, you know, when there are three players behind him, he's confident that he can make his own decision and that the
Mm-hmm.
team is going to back him up on that decision. And I think a big part of that for him will be just getting into the right situation. So, like, not Charlotte,
Yeah.
not, you know, we can name those garbage teams, like not Detroit. No knock on Detroit fans, but like, you guys know how you have it. You
Mm-hmm.
guys have had the best odds for the first pick like 4 years in a row and always ended up with like the fourth or fifth pick.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a miserable stretch for you guys. And had you been able to develop some of those young players you were scooping, you would be in a better position. So
Yeah.
all these teams drafting should really look at this draft as a way to kind of reevaluate their player development because I think, and it's showing again that look at all these Boston guys that I barely even heard of, and this season were like very effective winning players, like Sam Hauser.
Mm-hmm.
I, that dude was a bronze in my team like a couple years ago. Like I barely even knew that dude, and I was not familiar with his game this year, but it's a testament to the Celtics development. So
Mm-hmm.
half the battle is falling into the right situation. And like we were talking about Wemby with his situation, certainly was the right one for him. And I hope that this draft, everyone can find a good home where they're appreciated, but that's never the case.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to say who you have number two, and then you can go into it, and then if I have a different person at number two, I'll talk about it.
So the one I sent you, I actually have changed my second pick.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard a lot of rumblings that Donovan Clingan has been impressing a lot of people in workouts.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at the Wizards and their lack of a definitive center, I think that that's a good pick for them in a draft where I think he's one of the lowest risk picks in the lottery for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So
He's
I think that the Wizards are going to take Donovan Clingan at 2.
I have him at my three. The notes that I have for him, I mean, I didn't write down like which teams would fit each of these players the best. I have to do that at a later date when I go through like my off season checklist for each team.
Yeah.
Um, but I have him at my three just because I have him behind Zachary. But a lot of the things, obviously, the first thing you're going to point to is Shaq or Marc Gasol because he's 280 pounds at 7'2".
I like
Um,
the Walker Kessler comparison. I like
yeah,
that.
he's 280 pounds and he's 7'2". And the other thing that reminds me of Shaq with him is that he has a 57% free throw. So that's obviously an iconic Shaq thing. And but of course, one of the very first like things that we can point out with him is his defense. And then in my notes, in editing, I may take a screenshot and show it. But in my notes, I literally have Klingon, and then under his section, I put defense dot dot dot. He's 7'2", bruh. And like that's my only notes I put on the defense.
I think he's 7'3". Like he's like 285, and his wingspan's like 7'7", which I ideally you would want it to be a bit bigger, but at least it's bigger than his height. So
yeah, so I didn't
like
even
the
write
Marcus All comparison as well.
Yeah, so I didn't even write any like specifics about his defense. I just put he's
7'2", bro.
Yeah, like you want to talk about Wemby stoppers? Like, I mean, that's another one that's gonna be up there. But
might be one of the guys.
Yeah, just like those taller players though. I don't think that he's gonna be necessarily a unicorn like Porzingis or Wemby though, because watching him, I didn't see him really shoot. I mean, we touched on his free throw percentage.
Yeah.
And I didn't see like one shot from him beyond the arc when looking at his highlights. Pretty much every single point from him comes in the paint, which is good because he knows how to use his body to get to the basket, and he knows how to like back people up towards the basket. But if you get somebody like a Giannis, a Rudy Gobert, or something like that on him, he's definitely going to be locked up, obviously. And then I kind of put a similar thing to Sarr, to be honest, where I said anytime he's double teamed, he gets a little panicky, where he's kind of like he kind of puts the ball. He obviously with his height, he tries to put the ball up, and then say he's getting double teamed, and like people are blocking it and pushing the ball back down. So then he just kind of has to like keep throwing it up and getting double chance rebounds and double chance points over and over, where it takes him like maybe 3 or 4 actual tries of putting the ball up to get it in. So I don't know.
Another comp I just thought of is like a Jarrett Allen in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I mean by that especially is the unpredictability of Jarrett Allen. So I think there will be some issues with like touch and just feel for the NBA, like some big mans do. Like he'll feel a bit out of place at times, and I do think if he goes to, like I said, he was going to the Wizards, and you have him going at 3 to the Rockets, which I think you said you have Zachary going second.
Yeah.
To the Wizards.
Just because Poole isn't working out, and
who do you have as like Zachary's comparison?
I have him as Franz. I always mess this up. Is it Wagner or Wagner? Because I've heard it both ways.
Yeah, Franz Wagner.
I've heard people like. I swear, every time I see his name, I see it pronounced a different way. Because it's
my friend's family's German, and they say Wagner. So even if they're wrong, I'll say that until another German corrects me.
It's like playing zombies with Rick Tuff, and it's like he's like, I got the Wonderwaffle.
Wonderbar. I grew up on zombies. Like those are the days.
Yeah, that's how I always remember how German W's are pronounced. But I've heard ESPN announcers say Wagner, and so I was like, well, which is correct? And I figured it was Wagner because, again, like it makes sense. But just hearing other people say Wagner, I was like, well, which is it? So I wanted to make sure, but he's who I have as my comparison for him. So, and I did put that he, again, the same thing I said with KD with Sarr. I'm not saying he's the next Kawhi, but I'm saying he reminds me a little bit of Kawhi. But Kawhi is listed as 6'7", and Zach is listed at 6'9", so it's a little different. But he has good playmaking. He has he's 3-and-D. He has some good defense. He has, again, good playmaking and passing. Quick, penetrates the paint wherever he's going. He's a wing defender. So
I could see it.
Yeah.
So do we want to get into the Spurs, the 4th pick here? Because I think this is the pick they're going to keep.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to trade one I think they'll trade the higher pick. And I think they're going to take Stephon Castle
That's who I have
at
it
4.
for. That's who I have it for.
Because he's a big guard out of UConn. It's a winning program. I think he'll transition effortlessly from having Dan Hurley to having Greg Popovich. I think that's a very good place for a player like that to go. You know, he has the potential to be one of those really good big guards. Hopefully his defense is like above average. The comparison that I have for him is like an SGA light. So maybe not the ceiling of Shea, but like there's elements of what Shea brings to the table that I think he will have as well. Like maybe like elements of Penny Hardaway, like maybe not as high level playmaking. Like a shooting guard Penny Hardaway type. I could see that as well.
So I actually didn't
Ideally
put
better defensively.
I didn't put a comparison for Castle, but look, I'd have to relook at my highlights. I'd have to relook at the highlights of him, but looking at my notes, actually I don't know if I want to make this comparison because again I'd have to relook at his highlights, so this could be an outlandish comparison. But just looking at my notes, it reminds me of like a Tony Parker or Manu. Because he's able to pass high, which of course
I like the Manu comparison.
Yeah, because I have on one of my biggest notes on him is his Euro step, which obviously like Manu was one of the first people that like really brought that over. And then I have good court vision, which again the Spurs are looking for with Wemby, and with that he's able to pass the ball really high. Which again we're gonna want with somebody paired with Wemby. So he's able to be smart enough as a guard to be like, hey, this guy's 7 foot. Maybe I should pass the ball 8 feet in the air where only he can grab it. And he has spin moves, Euro step. He has defense, but defense that doesn't show up on the box score, if you know what I mean by that. He's able to really like
reflections, like
he's able to kind of like square you up and like defend you, but he's not necessarily gonna get like the actual steal or the block. But he's gonna put pressure on you.
To his defensive approach, like
people
at least respect the gravity of what he does.
Yeah, my biggest issue with him though, and obviously this can be like trained out of him. That's why I put a question mark on it. But I put sometimes he gets into offensive foul trouble. So, because especially with college, it's different than the NBA now with the flopping rule. I've seen that he's been getting offensive foul calls or he's done things that in the NBA would be a foul call because he does the typical thing of like when he shoots a 3 or he does something, he kind of kicks his legs out and does some other stuff that would be called an offensive foul now. So.
And part of that is you'd hope just the maturation of being in the NBA. Like a team like San Antonio is not going to let that kind of BS slide, and it's just not going to fly. Yeah, but we can get into the 5th pick if you're ready for that, because this is one that I'm excited for. I think for once Detroit's going to get someone that is at least going to be fun.
I have topic here, or however you pronounce it. Yeah. Do you have Connect?
So, I'm not sure if you knew this, but Topic, like, I think he tore his ACL or like part of it.
Yeah, I saw that he got injured, but he's still. They did a whole story about that, about how he got injured, but he's still gonna. What's it called? He's still eligible for the draft, and he still like says like I want to be in the draft. So
I
it's
think
definitely gonna drop him, but
yeah, we're not quite gonna get an MPJ situation. But I do think he's going to fall, and that's why I don't see any team like within the top 7 taking a risk on him. So at 5, I have Dalton Connect going to the Pistons, and my comp for Connect is a bigger JJ Redick. That's what I think. Hopefully he's a better defender, like a 3-and-D JJ Redick, because JJ was kind of just the 3. I mean, he could play pretty decent defense at the right point in his career, but as he got older, his first step wasn't there.
Yeah.
Any blow by that's just gone. Like he was he was effective, but not as effective as he used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But we can get into the sixth pick.
Well, I was
Who
gonna
do you have
say
at
with
six?
Connect, like my notes on him are like very short. He uses his body a lot, but he's not really a big player because he's a shooting guard. So I don't know how well he's gonna be able to use his body on the NBA stage. I put that he's a good shooter, but he has pretty bad defense. And I didn't really see much playmaking from him, which makes sense because he's a shooting guard rather than a point guard. But
He definitely has the
yeah,
frame for the defense though. Like six
yeah,
nine wingspan. He's 6'6". Like at shooting guard, that can be a very effective player.
yeah. That's kind of my notes on him is like I don't know how much he's going to be able to use his body like he does now against NBA players, and
And
then
that's why
the
I
defense,
did
and then
see some
yeah,
Clay comparisons, but the reason I don't really like that is Clay, like, so Clay now, I'm not talking about Clay now. I'm talking about Clay when he
pre-injury,
was one of the Splash Brothers.
yeah,
Clay, then he had a knack for, especially within the mid range, like, using his body, knowing when to pick his spots. Like, he wasn't big, but he could use his height, like 6'7". He could shoot over guys and, use his shoulder, back up. Like, and that's the type of physicality that I hope Connect can develop. And, like, ideally the defense as well, because
mm,
ultimately that's what is going to keep him in the NBA.
yeah. Do you want me to talk about topic now or talk about it when you wherever you have him?
Yeah, so we can get into topics because I thought it would kind of be a fun segue into the Spurs eighth pick, which I think if they still have their pick and if he falls there, I think they should draft him.
Mm-hmm.
I think he could fall to eight, and that's why the Spurs should
It's
look
pretty
to keep it.
possible
But if he's not there, just trade it.
because I saw people changing him out as the fourth pick, like around his injury. So, like people were having to pick between him and Castle. So it's like, well, if he does drop to the eighth, then we don't have to choose between them. We just get both, like you said. But I did put that he got injured, and his stats actually drop a lot in EuroLeague. So that kind of worries me about the NBA, where he's already seeing a dip in stats, and that was like before
He's
his injury. I'm
he's
pretty sure.
definitely not going to pull a Luka and average 20 his first year. Like
Yeah,
there's going to be some growing pains with him, I feel like.
yeah. I did put
But
that he has a pretty bad 3 point. But he does play a lot of ISO. He's really good off the pick and roll, which could work with Wemby a lot, just setting him up for pick and roll. Again, he's got pretty good court vision, just like Castle. My only thing is that he's not a very quick player, which with the pace that the NBA plays at now, and the pace is only going to keep increasing, he definitely needs to work on his agility and his speed. Otherwise, he's going to turn out like, say he really develops into a great player, and like the Spurs make the playoffs, I could see that turning into sort of an Anthony Edwards situation where it's like Anthony Edwards was fatigued almost every game of the playoffs, especially during the Mavs, because like he's just not built for that agility, that speed, that stamina, and that's kind of like what I saw looking at his highlights of him. So
yeah, I think the solution to the Ant thing is like they need to have another guy that can run with him, if that
mm,
makes sense.
yeah, and
Because
so having
he's kind of
Wimby,
running circles around all these big dudes and these defenders.
mm-hmm,
And they need to find a way to combine that defense with another scorer, scorer who can offset the extra energy Ant has to use to score because he is more of like a slasher, although he does pick his shots well.
mm-hmm,
But that's the Edwards thing. Right.
mm-hmm. Do you have anything else to add to Topic?
Yeah, Topic, I don't have a lot of thoughts on him. I mean, we could make all the Nikola Topic Jokic jokes, but the internet's
Mm-hmm.
already done that. So
Yeah.
I'm happy getting into the Hornets pick here at 6.
All right. Who do you have? Because I only
I
have
have
four more. I only have four more, or no, five more picks written down. Because it was hard to really give notes about some of the others, and again, like the picks are constantly switching.
That's
So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll probably do like the last 10 just like rapid fire just to
All right,
show who
cool.
I have. But
You said you had
I
Reed
have
though.
I have Reed Shepard at 6.
That's who I have. So, do you want me to go or
Yeah,
do you go?
yeah. You can give me who you have at 7.
I have Mattis. That's how you pronounce it, right? Matas.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of names we're gonna struggle with here, so
Yeah, exactly. Bear with us.
it's not
Um,
a spelling bee or a I don't even know what you'd say, but it's because I don't even know how to say this dude's name. This is another French player.
how do you
This
spell
is
it?
Tidjane.
I don't even have him on here, so I don't know who you're talking about.
No, no.
Yeah. Let me see.
Let's,
Let me see if I can look up what you're saying. To Jane. How do you spell
yeah,
it?
Saloon or so. Tidjane Saloon. Yeah, this is my like Giannis Antetokounmpo. This is what this is gonna age horribly. This guy's gonna be the best player in the
Let me see
NBA.
if I can find him. Oh, he's who people have at 8. Okay, I see who you're talking about. Tid
Alone.
Jane Saloon or Salon or whatever it
I'm just
is.
not
Yeah.
gonna say it. I'm gonna call him the guy.
Just call him TS, I guess. That
You
works.
can't even say alphabet TS.
Yeah.
You can call him TJ
Yeah, that works, TJ.
or TJane, something like that. I feel
Yeah.
like that'll catch on. No one's
That's
gonna want to
probably
say
going
his
to be
name.
his name is T Jane in the league. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, let
I
me know
mean,
what you got
okay,
on him.
we'll say TJane, but I have him at 7. And what I have for him, I think he's like one of those static, like he doesn't move super well,
Mhm.
but very fundamentally sound, has a lot of upside, and like 6'10", 7-foot wingspan. He's a bit lighter, but he has the frame to put on stuff. I think a
Mhm.
good comparison is like Michael Porter Jr.
Mhm. Which is interesting cuz like is MPJ a small forward? Let me just double check.
I think he's a small forward. I have TJ as a power forward, but
Yeah, they have him listed
positions
as
are
both
kind of
power
just a
MPJ's.
placeholder.
Yeah. They have him listed MPJ as both power forward and small forward.
Yeah, because
But
they kind of run Aaron Gordon at those two as well.
yeah, cuz but you had said he's 6'10 and I have him at 6'9 and in the NBA 6'9 versus 6'10 actually makes a big
A
difference.
big difference.
And so 6'9 they have him listed as 6'9 power forward and so that really stuck out to me. It's like ain't no way this dude's 6'9 and a power forward and especially only being, you
Zach
know,
Randolph build.
yeah. But I'm looking at his NBA his what's it called? Scouting stats. They have him this is on a out of 10 scale, I assume. They have intangibles at 8, rebounding 7, but they only have him as a 6 at NBA ready. But jump shot quickness at 8, strength 7, defense 8. Um, his strengths are stretch combo forward with very good size, solid length. You mentioned wingspan measured at 7'1", and then a bunch of other stuff. I like looking at the scouting website because it gives like a full paragraph on strengths and weaknesses. So I'm not going to read it all out. But his weaknesses is they say he's pretty raw, lacks experience, has played basketball just for a few years, so he's far from ready and will need much more time to develop than many other potential draft picks.
So it sounds like someone picked him up off the street and said, "Hey, you're tall. Come play basketball."
Yeah, exactly.
It sounds like that.
Yeah.
Bo Cruz type story here.
Bo Cruz. Hey, but if that's the
Yeah.
case, he could go crazy because we all know Bo
Yeah.
Cruz. So
Bo Cruz, like top 3 cinema ballers of all time.
mm-hmm. Just don't let him play Ant in the playoffs. I don't know if you've seen the full
Ant's a
movie.
menace. Ant's a menace.
Yeah.
All right. So who do you have at 8? Do you have anything more about T Jane
I don't
Or
have anything on TJ. I can touch on Reed if you want to talk about Reed, because we didn't really like dive into like specifics about him yet.
so Reed, I don't know. His comparison was tough for me because like there's so many players like him, but the way his game is, it didn't really remind me of him.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Mike Bibby was a good comparison,
Mm-hmm.
so I stuck with that. Like,
I actually
uh,
think that Reed could be a really good pick for the Spurs potentially if he drops anywhere. Like you were talking about Topic. If somehow Reed dropped to the 8, I would love to get him as well. Because I put that he has a really good 3 point. He has 52.1% from 3. He has a very high release, which is good. It can go over people. He's a catch and shoot, which we really need. Um, Again, like people hate when I bring his name up, but um, because of obviously everything he did. But assume every time I'm talking about him, I'm talking about him post allegations and everything, obviously. But I talked a lot before everything happened with the Josh Primo and how good Josh Primo was with his catch and shoot, and how that could have been a good piece. And then obviously like we had to get rid of him for the other reasons. But he was like, and that's like what like my big. I don't want to say my big break. That sounds cringe, but that was like one of my biggest videos. That was like one of my first videos to go really big was like talking about how good Josh Primo could be for the Spurs. And a big point of that video was the catch and shoot. So I really want to get that back somehow. And I put on, obviously it's harder to tell this just from highlights, but like also looking at interviews and stuff from him, he seems to have a very low ego. He seems pretty humble and he's a team player, which would fit right in with the Spurs culture. I talk about Spurs culture all the time, so I shouldn't have to explain what I mean by that. He has really good playmaking, which again works really well with Wemby because he has really good passes to, and I'm probably going to mess up this name like you were saying, but Vonnemeer on Kentucky. Um, but he does lack a little bit of size and physicality. He can be inconsistent at certain times and be out defended. And I put a little note explaining more here. He has 7 games scoring 20 or more, but he has 12 games scoring fewer than 10. And then again, that same scouting website that I was talking about earlier put he doesn't have a lot of moves to break down defenders, relies primarily on using angles to get his shots, may need some time to adjust to the speed and athleticism for the next level. His game isn't very versatile and best suited playing a specific role. And not being very, again, talking about the speed and athleticism, not very quick, not very agile. But they talked best suited playing a specific role. I think that can be, again, like the catch and shoot, like maybe not a point guard, because like we can get the point guard with another draft pick, but like maybe like a really good shooting guard that like just spaces the floor a bit, stands on the corner, passes it out, catch and shoot, you know. Yeah.
yeah, no, I can see it. I just, for what you're getting, I just think he's a bit undersized at shooting guard. So there's a lot of questions there. But then again, there are plenty effective shooting guards at that height. So who says he can't be like a Desmond Bain? So
Yeah, I just don't think he has enough speed or anything quite yet to quite be a point guard. Again, he does have some good playmaking, but like he doesn't have the full skill set to necessarily be like the primary ball handler outside of Wemby. Like,
so he kind of
yeah.
reminds me of Jamal Murray when he came into the league. Like they didn't really know whether or not to call Jamal a shooting guard or a point guard. And he kind of did develop into the perfect point guard next to Jokic, but he's still on most other teams, although on paper is a point guard, would likely function more as a shooting guard because I think he's more effective that way. Like he is a good playmaker, not a great one. He's a good shooter, not a great shooter. So he very much relies on his feel and his brain. So hopefully Kentucky gets or Kentucky can pass on that mentality.
Hmm.
Because I know, didn't they lose their coach?
Yeah, they lost their coach either
So
last year or two
I
years
wouldn't
ago.
draft a Kentucky player after this.
Yeah.
No.
Um, but I can just say my next three draft picks, and then you can just say what like whatever your thoughts on are on
Yeah,
them,
so
in order, and then you can rapid fire your rest of them. So I
go
have
for it.
Mattis, Holland, and Dillingham. So I don't know what
So you
order
have
you have
Mattis
them in.
going. You have Mattis going to the Spurs.
Well, this is like not necessarily like in order. It's just like and not necessarily at 8, just
So
the
oh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because I have Topic, like I said, going to the Spurs,
Mhm.
and my comp for him was I said like a rich man's Dragic, I think,
Mhm.
because he brings that European feel. But I have at 9, it's the Grizzlies pick. I have them taking Mattis.
Mhm.
I think that's more of what Jaren Jackson was trying to do this year is what Mattis gives you, and
Mhm.
then he can focus more on his defense.
Yeah.
But and then at 10, I have Rob Dillingham going to the
Mhm.
Jazz, and then from there, I can just go rapid fire here because
Yeah.
um,
I have Mattis having, so my notes for Mattis are that he has good vertical, he penetrates the paint, he has really good defense, but he has a high turnover. He has a lot of turnovers and a high turnover to possessions ratio. And then with Dillingham, I have he plays at a fast pace. He can finish through contact. He has really good handles, and he has a decent 3 point. And then with Holland, wherever he goes, he has a lot of turnovers, but he also has a lot of steals. So he'll just have to work on the ratio between them. But he has a really bad 3 point and a really bad free throw. But he's good and fast pace. He has a really good speed and agility, and athleticism. So like on fast breaks, especially, like he's really good. And he relies a lot on his defense to offense game. So like um, he'll get like a defensive stop, and then he'll switch that again into the fast break for the fast pace and get like a lob. Um, so, but those are basically my next three, and then we can talk a little bit about like Zach Edey and Bronny James later. Those type
yeah,
players.
it was more those two that I wanted to talk about after I kind of say where I have them going, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm just gonna rapid fire like the next 10. I'm not gonna go through the whole first round,
Yeah.
but I do have my mock draft going
Yeah,
that
I
deep.
just wanted to give like my details on the last few ones. I gave the notes on like before you rapid
Yeah,
fire the rest.
go for it.
Yeah, that was it. That's what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
just wanted to
Okay.
do that before you rapid fired. So go ahead.
All good. Yeah, so I have Ron Holland from G League Ignite going to the Bulls. And I think there's a bit of RJ Barrett, Jalen Brown there, Michael Kidd Gilchrist. Like, I say that cautiously
Mm-hmm.
because there was some good things with Michael Kidd Gilchrist, but some bad things as well. Hence why he's not in the league anymore. Or if he is, I don't know where. But
Mm-hmm.
at 12, I have Cody Williams going to the Thunder, and I think that's the pick that they got from the Rockets. He's a small forward out of Colorado. I really think a good comp for him is like Cam Reddish. Now, get into 13, where this is where I have Zach Edey going, which is pretty much higher than I think anyone else has had them in their mock draft. And I'm trying not to let my Canadian thing get in the way. But I
Mm-hmm.
do think that for the first time, and I don't know how long, the National Player of the Year is being kind of underrated. Like I know Obi won it and he didn't go till like pick 7 or 8 to the Knicks that one year, but I do think that what Edie brings to the table, a lot of those skills are NBA ready or
Mm-hmm.
within weeks he would develop them.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't teach 7'5", you can't teach 300 pounds, and you can't teach a near 8 foot wingspan.
Yeah.
Those things alone, the fact that he moves remotely well, like even remotely well at 7'5",
Mm-hmm.
7'4", whatever you want to call it, shoes, no shoes, like he's a big ass dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's 7'5", bro. But
Yeah.
um,
I have him. I have my comparison to him as a Zubac or a Boban. So
I like the bigger Zubac comparison. I like Boban with better touch
yeah.
and like better movement.
Mhm.
Now, I do think there are some elements of Yao Ming, and his ceiling is definitely approaching that. Now, realizing that Yao Ming at his peak was pretty insane,
Mhm.
I think he will be somewhere in the realm of like fringe to quality starter.
Mhm.
Now, he could just be, that 15, 20-minute guy off the bench that gets a double-double and, shoots 6 for 8 from the field on a championship team as well. Because
Mhm.
those types of guys are useful, but his career trajectory really does depend on where he goes, how much they believe in his skill set, and kind of what the team needs itself. Like if he goes to New York, for example, I don't think he's going to develop as much as if he goes to the Blazers at 14. I
Mhm.
definitely think there would be more focus solely on him just because of, well, what are you going to put your energy into the veterans on Portland? Because where has that gotten them? So,
Yeah.
they have a little more resources to give to a broader range of young players. So I think a team like that, he would reach a higher ceiling, but also could just crash and burn.
Mhm.
So recognizing the risk with him, I still think the Kings taking him at 13 would be a good pick.
Yeah.
So my next pick I have, and this is another name that I struggle to say, going to the Blazers. His last name is Misi Masai,
Let me see if I
and
can pull it up on the mock
he's the
draft.
center out of Baylor. But this is another guy that I thought fit the like Nick Claxton, like kind of lanky, big wingspan type defender.
What was his name again? Or like your
He's the center out of Baylor. He's from Cameroon. I his
is it
name
YVES? Is that who you're talking
yeah,
about? Yeah.
yeah. I don't know how to say his name.
I think it's like YVES. I think it's literally just YVS and then
Eves.
Masai. But I could
Yeah,
be very wrong.
we'll find out during the draft.
Yeah.
And then going to the Heat next, I have Devin Carter out of Providence.
Okay.
Kind of have him penciled in as like a Marcus Smart light, like maybe more offensive minded. He does have a really good wingspan at like 6'9".
Mhm.
Um, Next, I have Tristan Da Silva going to the Sixers at, I think their pick is 16.
Mhm.
And whatever, I have the right order. I don't have the numbers next to them, but I have Da Silva out of Colorado. Comp, like maybe I don't is Keegan Murray above 6'8"? Because I like the Keegan Murray comparison for
Can
him.
check for
So
you right now. I got
yeah,
the I
I
got
think
my
I want to
Google.
say Keegan Murray is like 6'9".
He is 6'8" actually.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that comparison's right there.
Yeah.
I have, and this is another player that I think has the potential to maybe have a very surprising NBA career, and that is Isaiah Collier out of USC.
Mhm.
Now, Collier, I know in high school he was like one of the top recruits in the class, and USC, the reason that he's so low is they did awful. Like, and this is going to be our segue into the Bronny James stuff.
Yeah.
USC was like 15 and 17. They weren't even close to sniffing the tournament.
Mhm.
He still put up pretty good numbers on a
Yeah.
really bad team.
The
So
the mock draft actually has him one above YVS. So they have
yeah, like
you have Tristan D
at
Silva.
this point,
Yeah.
everything could go like it could be 5 picks off. 'Cause
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
it's one of those types of drafts.
For all we know,
But
Sar will go second, and then freaking Castle somehow jumps to 1. Like that's so unpredictable right now.
who knows? Like I know in hockey I've seen a lot of really crazy drafts just because the value of a single player in hockey isn't really as much as it is other sports.
Mm-hmm.
But like basketball, especially, like one player you could change your team.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's why every player, gets 2, 3, 4 first round picks because they know for every first round pick that is an all star, there's 5 that aren't.
Mm-hmm.
For every first round pick that turns into an MVP, there's 29 that aren't.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
just gotta pick and choose these drafts because they say there's less talent, but you just gotta look harder
Mm-hmm.
because other teams aren't looking as hard. They're looking to trade their picks.
Yeah. Um, we were originally going to talk about like Bronny James stuff, but we're already over an hour and 35 minutes. So what we
Yeah.
can do is maybe we can record here again soon, hopefully, and then we'll dive into the Olympic stuff, and then we can save the Bronny
Yeah.
James stuff for that episode as well. But is there anything else you want to add? Closing messages? Anything you want to shout out? I already got all of his socials and stuff are right here with the @ symbol, but of course they'll also be in the description. But if you don't want to click the link and just type it in, then his username is right here. So
I think in the spirit of the draft, I'll leave it at this. I think if you want to build through the draft, you need to, as a team, aspire to win.
mm-hmm.
So I know that's somewhat paradoxical, but I believe there's something in the forage of building a great team that the basketball gods give you some luck.
Mm-hmm.
Like hence the Pistons like kind of being just where they're at because I just don't think they're going about it the right way. I think they're disrespecting the game of basketball. And like I was talking about the Raptors, they did the same thing. And I was very happy they didn't get their pick because had they kept it, other teams would be even more inclined to do that. And the reason I have such a sour feeling about it is the Mavericks pick this year, Derek Lively. Look what he did for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that pick should have been New York's pick because Dallas tanked at the end of that season and barely by a hair got that pick back.
Yeah.
So I'm salty. And maybe that's
Yeah.
what this whole thing's about. But
yeah, I hate tanking.
you play the
Even as
game
a
to
Spurs
win.
fan, I hate it.
You play the game to win.
Yeah.
You should never be rewarded for doing the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll leave it at that. Like, I know Jordan said it in The Last Dance. Like, everyone says you play to win. You know what? Like, you should accept defeat with grace, but you play to win.
Mm-hmm.
You should be mad that you lost because you should want to win.
Exactly.
Like, you should not be celebrating winning the draft lottery unless it's like a generational talent.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, it's just a symbol that you were one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that. I just hope that more teams in the future just aspire to build through the draft, through their player development, through the G League system, because I think it's incredibly underrated right now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that being said, especially a draft like this, that's really all I have to say. Like, please quit with the tanking bullshit because I know another team's going to do it next year. And I just don't ever want to see these teams get rewarded for it.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that.
And I love like Adam Silver's approach to it as well, like the in-season tournament and the play-in. And of course, a lot of that also has to deal with like TV ratings and revenue. But it also like he admitted like he's very like explicit with like, yeah, fuck tanking. Like we're gonna do what we can to stop that. And the play-in and the in-season also like were created partly for that as well as to get more people to actually watch regular season. But
then it did result in at the end of the season, I thought the tanking was extreme because they were almost making up for the games earlier in the year where they were trying.
Yeah.
That's really what I noticed with Toronto, especially calling them out.
Yeah. But I think we're going to go ahead and leave it there, guys. So, again, we'll probably have another episode coming here soon talking about some of the Olympic stuff, maybe some other off-season stuff coming up, and, of course, Bronny James and what that means for teams, especially if he goes to another team and LeBron follows him. But go check out the Six Man. Again, his stuff on screen should be somewhere around this corner, and all of his stuff will also be in the description, all that good stuff. And we'll see y'all in the next one. Nathan Burnett, episode 65. Peace out.
This is not okay. This needs to stop now.